All right, we're going to talk about this topic, synthetic division. All right. First off, synthetic division. Okay, the reason it's called synthetic division is because it's actually multiplication. Which I think most people, it's easier for them to multiply things than divide things. So that's a good thing. All right. Now, why even do synthetic division? Why? All right. So then synthetic division can show whether or not a number is a real root. All right. And remember what real roots are. So I'm going to make this function that looks like this. So now we're into polynomials. So we have more. And remember that every place that the graph crosses the x-axis, that these are real roots. They're real because they're on the x-axis. All right, and they're called roots. Also called zeros because they're where y equals 0. All right. Okay, and if we made this was let's say this was 5 here, and this was 2, and this was -2. Our factor here would be x minus 5, and so x minus 5 equals 0, and that means that our root is, or 0 is actually 5. Okay, we're going to need this idea when we do synthetic division. All right. So anyway, that gives you an idea. Why would I even want to do this? Okay. And it's a way of finding out whether or not you have a real root. Okay. All right. So we are going to do a real division, a division with a root that has a real number. Okay, I paused our video for a second to go find this problem. And so you might take a minute to write that down. But we're going to divide, as you can see, we're going to divide x cubed plus 3x squared minus 16x minus 6, and we're going to divide that by x minus 3. Okay, now, if x minus 3, remember that we're checking. All right, so we have x minus 3 equals 0. So we're checking if is x equals 3, is that a real root? Question mark. Is that a real root? All right. And we're going to do that by some kind of fancy multiplications. But remember, we're checking to see whether x equals 3 is a real root. So this is going to be an important part. All right. So, and this is our possible real root. All right. And you might also think about it as your multiplier. All right. When we go through this now, you're going to need some fancy math magic here. All right, so going to need a little box that looks like this. All right, and in the box, you're going to write each one of these numbers from our equation. And remember that this is an invisible 1. All right, so we're going to take each one of those, we're going to write them in a row right here. So there's a 1, and I make sure you write the sign down with it. And -16, and -6. All right, so we have everything we need to get started here. We have our possible real root, which we're also going to use as a multiplier. Remember, one way to think of it is if you're dividing by x minus 3, your multiplier or your possible real root is always going to be the opposite sign. All right, remember that. So we're going to call this the opposite sign. So remember that this number is the opposite sign. All right. Anyway, your first step is always to bring down whatever number is here. In this case, it's a 1. All right. Now we're going to go through a process of multiplying and then adding and multiplying and adding. All right. And we're going to, you got to think of these as little columns right here. All right. And so the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to put this 3 down here because the 3 is our multiplier as well as our possible real root. All right. So we're going to take 3 times 1, and we're going to take the result of that, and we're going to write it right here. So 3 times 1 is 3. All right. So that's a +3. All right. All right, then now in our little column here, we're going to add these two together. So we have a +3 and a +3, and that gives us a +6. All right. Now we're going to multiply by 3 again. So we're going to take this 6 and we're going to multiply it by 3. And we're going to write it right there. And that's going to give us 3 times 6 is 18. All right, and it's positive. So that's going to give us a positive 18. Oh, I must have clicked it. So too fat there. All right. All right, and then we're going to add these two together in this column. So we have a -16 and a positive 18. That's going to give us a positive 2. All right, and we do it one more time. So 3 times 2, and that's going to give us a positive 6. All right, and then that's going to give us, sorry, I'll fix this right here. All right, and I'm going to write that in a different color. That's going to give us a 0. All right, and this is, so if the result is 0, then the number is a real root. Okay, so in this case, we can say that 3 definitely is a real root of this equation, right? And we could check that if we wanted to on Desmos, for instance, another way to check if real roots are there. All right. And we just have one last step here. All right. And we want to know what are the factors that we made here. All right. Okay, so the first factor is going to be x minus 3, right? Because that's what we started with. And then we divided, all right, and we got these numbers. We got a 1 and a +6 and a +2. All right. Well, we know that if it's a factor, there have to be some x's in there. All right. And so one thing to remember about this is that another way to look at this is that you are dividing by x. All right, so our first term was x to the 3rd power, and we're dividing by x. And our second term was x squared, and we're dividing by x. And so what happens is when you divide by x, you lose a power, right? And so in this case, you lose a power. And in this one, we had x over x. In that case, you lose the whole thing because it turns into a 1. All right. And so another way to think about this, if you want, is that we are always going to, take our answer, all right, for our answer subtract 1 power. Subtract 1 power. All right, so we started out with x to the 3rd power. So we're going to end up with x to the 2nd power. And here we started with the second power, take away 1, that's x to the 1st power. We don't really need to write that. I'll just write it here to say what we're doing. Okay, and then on the last one, we have an invisible 1 here. Well, we take 1 away from that, and it becomes x to the 0 power, which is a 1. So it kind of disappears from our equation. All right. Okay, so there's 2 answers here, if you want to think about that. Okay, one answer is that yes, 3 is a real root of this equation, this function. All right, and then the second is the factors. So the factors of our equation are x minus 3 times 1x squared plus 7x plus 2. Okay, so those are the 2 possible answers that I could ask you for when you're doing this on an assignment or on your quiz. All right, so that's synthetic division, and I hope that was helpful.